please let me introduce Amy to you. Amy grew up in Kentucky, and now she lives in Georgetown with her husband Eric and their 3 children. Amy is a trailblazer, graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, and went on to become the first ever woman in the Marine Corps to fly a combat mission in an FA-18. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you on behalf of the women of America, as well as everyone, for your service.
It's my honor.
She spent her career serving her country and making our government work for everyday Kentuckians is her next mission. Amy's goal is to make sure every Kentuckian has access to a quality education, health care they can afford, a good paying job, and a fair shot in life. There's something we can all get behind. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Finally, beating Mitch after 36 years in office will be historic. This is a woman who can make history if we just help her and get behind her. We can make history this fall together. I have the honor of introducing Colonel Amy McGrath. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out today. Breckinridge County. And just flying in here, you have an awesome little airfield right here. And it's great to be able to come and talk to you in person. I just flew in from northern Kentucky, and we're headed down to Hopkinsville after this. This race is about our country, of course, but it's about Kentucky. And it's about where we need to go and the types of leaders we need to have. At the end of the day, this race isn't about me, and it's not about Mitch. It's about us. It's about us. And it's about the country we want to have, the country we stand for, and where our state is going in the future for our kids. You know, I never thought I'd be running for a political office in my life. I was about 12 years old, 11, 12 years old when I had this sort of crazy dream at that time for a young girl. I just wanted to fly fighter jets. I loved these things. Aircraft. I fell in love. I would sit on the top of our house, our little ranch house up in northern Kentucky, and I would get the ladder out and I would climb to the top of the house and sit on the roof and watch the airplanes go by, landing to Cincinnati International. That's how crazy I was at that age. And I fell in love, and I wanted to serve my country, and I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But I had to learn about government at that young age, because there was a federal law prohibiting me as a young girl, as a woman, from serving on aircraft carriers and from being a fighter pilot. And at that time, I didn't understand that. Like, what's the law, Mom? Let's just change the law. They haven't met me yet, right? Just change it. And my mother and father were the ones who had to sit me down and say, well, honey, in America, you know, you can't change the law, but you can advocate for change. And it's your member of Congress and your senator that changes the law with the president. So I became an advocate at that age. I wrote my member of Congress. He was a fairly conservative guy by the name of Jim Bunning. And he wrote me back a really interesting letter, which I still have today. At least he wrote me back. And that letter says, you know, basically no change. You're a girl, go do something else. I'm not going to fight for you. We don't need to change in this area. And I didn't quit. I wrote my senator, Mitch McConnell. Yes, he was the senator back then when I was 12. He never wrote me back. Okay? But I didn't quit. I wrote every member of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees asking them to change that law. And I got lucky because when I was a senior in high school, up the road in northern Kentucky, we had this amazing thing. The year was 1992. This amazing thing called an election in this country. And we had, that year, 1992, we had more women elected to Congress than ever before in history at that time. And we had a new president in President Clinton, Bill Clinton, just elected. Within several months of President Clinton's inauguration, Congress had rescinded what was called the very obscure law, what was called the Combat Exclusion Law. And President Clinton, in standard Clinton fashion, didn't open up all jobs to women, but opened up many, many more, sort of incrementally, right? But including that year, though, and this was in early 1993, he opened up, with Congress's consent and pushing, shall we say, from a lot of women members of Congress, opened up aircraft carriers to women and opened up fighter jets. And folks, that changed my life. Because I was 17 years old, I had an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy. I left home 1 month after graduating from high school, went to Annapolis, Maryland, swore to defend the Constitution of the United States of America 1 month after my 18th birthday. And I loved it. I never looked back. I served the country for the next 24 years, wore the uniform, became a United States Marine, which, you know, I kind of feel like is the best. But I married a Navy guy, so that's, we have the Navy Marine Corps team. But the point is, for the next 24 years, we served the country, and we served with people from all walks of life. With people from rural Kentucky, with people from New York City, men and women from California, and we all wore the uniform to defend our democracy, to defend America. And we came together to finish the mission, whatever that was. We didn't look at each other and say, oh, are you a Democrat or Republican? Not once in my career did I ever look to the man or woman on my left or right, the Marine on my left or right, and say, are you a Democrat or Republican? Not once. We all said, what's the mission? What do we need to do for our country? That's the kind of person, that's the kind of leader I believe our country needs again. Such that when you get into office, you forget about that kind of polarization. And you just get back to, what does our country need? What does Kentucky need? What do we need to do? And actually get things done. But that requires getting our democracy back. Back from a man, literally, who is stifling debate. And that, unfortunately, here's the good news and bad news. The bad news is, that is our senator here in Kentucky. That is Mitch McConnell. 400 bills sitting on his desk. Stifling debate on all the issues of the day. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. We live in Kentucky, and we can do something about it. And unlike all these other 48, 49 states in the Union, we actually can get rid of this man who is stifling and hurting our democracy in so many ways. And I would argue hurting Kentucky. Look at where we're at right now. First of all, 36 years is long enough. Nobody should be in office that long. He wants to be in office 42 years. Nobody should be there that long. And look at where we're at. This is a system. We are more polarized than ever. We're more partisan than ever. We're more divided than ever. We have more dysfunction than ever. We have more inequality than ever. And we have a senator who is the Senate Majority Leader who built this very system and this Congress that can't get anything done. He built it. He owns this mess. Everything that you think that is wrong in Washington, the backdoor deals, the shipping jobs to China to line the pockets of CEOs, year after year after year after year, the petty partisan politics, the cowering down to big moneyed lobbyists, everything that you think that is the swamp in Washington, that's Mitch McConnell. And when people say, I want to drain the swamp, I say, well, great. You can't do that until you get rid of the guy that built it. We got to get rid of him. 36 years is long enough. And if you look at Kentucky, where's Kentucky at? This man's been around 36 years. We have the highest cancer rates in the country. We have some of the highest rates of diabetes, some of the highest rates of heart disease, some of the lowest wages in the country. All on his watch. And our signature industries in Kentucky have declined, all on his watch. And he hasn't had a plan for the future. He does not have a plan. You'll see that as a theme that I'm going to talk about today. Even with coronavirus, he doesn't have a plan. Doesn't know where he's going. And now with coronavirus, look at where Kentucky is. Look at where our country is. Kentucky. We have 1 million Kentuckians that have somehow filed for unemployment. in the last 3 or 4 months. We have 300,000 Kentuckians that don't have health care. We have 40% of renters in Kentucky about ready to be evicted right now. We have a $400 billion shortfall for state and local governments. That's just services that we need. Our economy is in shambles. And look at where we are nationwide. 186,000 Americans. We are losing more Americans per day, 4 times more Americans per day to coronavirus than we lost at the height of World War II. At the height of World War II, we were losing 250 Americans a day in that conflict. Now we're losing 1,000 Americans a day. And we still don't have a plan to tackle this virus. Other countries have done it. It's not like we can't do anything. Think about the fact that this is the first time, the first major international crisis in 100 years in which no one in the world is looking to the United States for leadership. It's humiliating. And it's because of the terrible leadership we have in Mitch McConnell. It really is. This is a man who failed to prepare us for this coronavirus, failed to make sure that the national stockpile of personal protective equipment was ready, failed to invest in the National Institute of Health, actually tried to cut the Center for Disease Control pandemic response portion of that agency, failed to warn us when it came. He has the highest levels of security briefings of any member of Congress, even higher than the intelligence committees. And when was the first time he even mentioned the word coronavirus? I'll tell you when. It wasn't until the stock market crashed. Because that's what he cares about. Failed to warn us. Failed to stand up to a president and say, hey, we gotta get going. We gotta do this. We lost so much time because he didn't have the guts to stand up and say, we got to do something. We got to prepare people. We lost lives because of it. And then all along the way, with regards to what Congress is supposed to be doing and helping the American public right now, what's he doing? All along the way, he's championing big corporations. $500 billion slush fund for big corporations almost immediately. But then when it comes to state and local governments, when it comes to you, when it comes to regular working people, he says, oh, I think you ought to think about bankruptcy. Yeah. Sure. Your state pension, police forces, sheriff's departments, fire departments, they're all teetering right now. And he won't help Main Street. And the biggest thing, and this is the most important, probably one of the most important traits I learned as a Marine, right? And all of you who are veterans in the Air Force and Army, and no matter what service, what's the most basic trait for leadership that you learned? The most basic: responsibility. Take responsibility. Take responsibility. Mitch McConnell, where is he at right now? He is on vacation. When all these benefits ended, when we need our economy to be propped up right now, when we need the federal government to help state and local governments, when we need a national plan for testing and tracing to get the coronavirus under control, when we need these things, where is he at? Leaders don't leave. He's on vacation. Contrast that with the governorship that we have here. We have a governor who we know we had to come together and figure out how to do an election in the middle of a pandemic. Guess what? Democratic governor got together with the Republican Secretary of State and they negotiated a plan. That's America. That's coming together for our democracy. Contrast that with a Senate Majority Leader, our senator here, who throws an unworkable bill for help, for aid, and then runs away. Won't even negotiate with the other side. It's dereliction of duty. So in my mind, he's got to go for that reason. 36 years is long enough. America can do better. Kentucky can do better. So what are we doing? And when you say, well, what plan do you have? And I'm very critical of Mitch McConnell because he doesn't have a plan. to tackle this coronavirus. He doesn't have a plan to rebuild Kentucky. And if you think about where Kentucky's at, this is a man who's been around 36 years. And where are we? Look around. Are things getting any better? Even before the coronavirus. How are we doing? This is a man who has no plan. Does anybody think we have a plan to anybody in leadership to make Kentucky better? When people say to me, oh, I just want to get back to normal. That's coronavirus. I just want to get back to normal. Folks, normal is what got us here. Normal is what got us the greatest loss of life in a 6 to 7 month period in American history. Normal is what got us to an economy that is in shambles. Normal is what got us to massive 25 million Americans have been demonstrating in the last 3 or 4 months, calling, on change, the change that we badly need because of the racial injustice that we've had in this country for far too long. We've got to do better. So I'm going around Kentucky. I'm talking to anybody and everybody that will listen, whether they're home watching their TVs, or whether they can come outside to your beautiful runway here, to your beautiful airport, and I'm telling them about my plan. I'm just an American. I'm just a Kentuckian who loves her country, who served in the military, who learned a lot about leadership in the United States Marine Corps. Everything I learned about leadership, I learned in the Marine Corps. About standing up, about taking responsibility, about being somebody with integrity and honor and character, and being somebody who actually has a plan. So I'm talking about that plan specifically. The first thing we need is immediate aid to Kentucky. We need immediate aid to America, extending the unemployment benefits for people who have been kicked off their job from no fault of their own right now. I was in line in the unemployment line in Frankfurt a couple of months ago. Everybody I talked to in that line had a full-time job prior to the coronavirus. They're in the service industry. They're in industries like sports photography. They're not just there. They're trying to put food on the table. We need to help them. We need to extend those benefits right now because those jobs aren't back yet. And they're not going to get back until we get the coronavirus under control. So we need a national plan to tackle the coronavirus. Testing, robust testing and tracing. And the equipment, swabs. I can't believe I'm saying this. We're 7 months into this thing and we still don't have enough swabs. Where is the leadership? We need this. We need money for state and local governments. State and local governments can't have a deficit like the federal government can. And they're the ones that our current leadership has said, oh, we just dump everything on the state and local governments with no resources whatsoever. You guys handle it. No, that's not how we do things. We need help. So that's number one. Number two is healthcare. I launched this campaign on healthcare a year ago. Healthcare was a major issue for Kentucky. It's even more of a major issue now. And when you talk about, let's not do this pandemic thing again, okay? And not doing this pandemic thing again means we need to fix our healthcare system. It means that, we've got to do things like shore up the Affordable Care Act, because that wasn't a perfect piece of legislation, but I tell you what, it did a lot of good for Kentucky. So let's not throw it away for purely political reasons. Mitch McConnell tried to throw it away 19 times. And the problem is, he didn't have a replacement. Again, no plan. Just throw 250,000 Kentuckians off their health care with no plan. That's what he wanted to do. That's why the patriot, John McCain, gave it the big thumbs down. Because John McCain knew that you're hurting people when you do that. You don't have a plan. So we've got to shore it up. We've got to take the things we like about it, like protections for pre-existing conditions, and then we've got to make it better. We make it better by having things like a public option, having an Uncle Sam plan, the idea that you could buy a government nonprofit plan if you want to. The same way that my husband and I, who served in the military, have for our family. You should have that too, that option. And during the pandemic, it should be subsidized if you're kicked off of your job because you don't have any income to pay for it. This is a no-brainer. It's common sense, okay? And it's a system where if you like your insurance, you don't have to change. But for those people that don't have it or can't afford it, we give them an option that is affordable. It's not rocket science. We can do this. We can do things like getting prescription drug prices down, This is not a red or blue issue. 90% of Americans want to get prescription drug prices down. 90%. There are 6 bipartisan bills sitting that have passed the House, sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk right now to get prescription drug prices down. President Trump actually has in his, I don't know what you want to call it, agenda. It's an agenda that they've written down. Getting prescription drug prices is like one of the top 3 things that he wants to do, and he's been trying to do it for years. Why can't he get that done? I'll tell you why. Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell won't allow any of those 6 bipartisan bills to even get to the floor of the Senate for a debate. Mitch McConnell is bought off by Big Pharma. He gets the most money from Big Pharma and that special interest group than any other member of Congress in the last year, last cycle. This isn't rocket science, folks. He is bought off. And it's not a red or blue issue. It's not a conservative or liberal issue. It's common sense. These are the types of things we can do if we can get rid of him. The third thing is we have to rebuild Kentucky. And that means we have to build good and have a structure for good quality jobs here. And people say, well, how do we get them? Well, other parts of the country have been able to do this. And how do they do it? They do it with massive investment in education, okay, a workforce development. They take care of their people with investment in health care because we know we have an opioid drug problem here in Kentucky. And we're only going to tackle that if we take care of people with prevention and treatment. And another really huge thing is, and that we haven't done, and Mitch McConnell is not interested in doing, is investment in infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about roads, bridges, dams, sewer systems. We got to fix those. And we can fix those with good quality jobs, by the way. But I was just left in northern Kentucky. We fixed the Brent Spence Bridge up there in northern Kentucky. That's 25,000 jobs. Right there. We invest in ourselves. But I'm talking about 21st century infrastructure. What's that?
Internet.
Rural broadband.
Internet.
Access.
Broadband. Rural broadband.
Access.
Yes. We need a broadband New Deal. That's what we need. In this county, over a quarter of kids in this county do not have access to broadband. The education of the future, when I was growing up, when you were growing up, the tools to succeed were a pen and a paper. The tools to succeed for this generation right now, it's happening right now, is not a pen and a paper. It is more than that. It is computer and the internet. And if they don't have it, they will be left behind. I would argue they're already left behind. In addition, no business is going to want to come to a county in Kentucky that cannot talk to the modern world. We are not going back to 1960. That's a fact. I've talked to business leaders that want to come to counties in Kentucky, and guess what? They lose cell phone coverage when they drive out there to look at the site, and there's no internet. You know what they do? They drive right back to that airport, and they go to somewhere else in the country that has the infrastructure. In my mind, we have to have leaders that think the way FDR thought. When FDR brought electricity to rural America, FDR didn't say, let me see how this is going to help the corporate elite and if it's profitable for corporations. He didn't say that. He said, no, we got to do this as a country. We got to invest in ourselves. Eisenhower, Republican president, when he built the interstate highway system, he didn't say, well, let me think how much corporate America can make money off of this interstate highway system, and if it's profitable, we'll build that highway. No, he didn't. He said we got to do this for national security. We got to do this for our economy. And that that highway system, that national highway system was arguably one of the things that made our economy the greatest economy the world has ever seen. There's hardly any other country that has something like that. And by the way, that passed 99-1 in the Senate. Bipartisan. Thank God Mitch McConnell wasn't there back then. Because he wouldn't have allowed it to the floor. It's just basic stuff. It's investing in ourselves. And if you say to me, well, we don't have the money for that, that's BS. Mitch McConnell he worked overtime. He worked overtime to pass $2 trillion tax cuts for corporations and the wealthiest 1%, costing us $2 trillion. And we can't fix bridges? And we can't give rural broadband to people? It's wrong.
We can't even have math.
Well, I mean, it's just wrong. So we got to invest in ourselves. That's number 3. Number 4 is we have to tackle the massive racial injustice and inequality that we've seen in this country for far too long. Okay? And that means we have to understand that the inequality has gotten so much worse. When I was in the 1960s, the average CEO made 25 times more than the average worker. When I was in high school up north here, the average CEO made 65 times what the average worker makes. Can anybody guess what it is now, today in 2020? What is it?
300.
You're close. 350. 350 times. The inequality is out of control. And it's because a lot of our public policy is dictated by a guy like Mitch McConnell, who is literally in the pockets of those people that have power and want more money. And the rest of us, like wages in Kentucky, haven't increased at all. Not at all in the last 20 years. This is a real problem. So what do? We do things like universal pre-K, so that kids can start out and be on the same footing from the very beginning. We make college more affordable. And how do we do that? In my mind, we do that with basic American things, like expanding what we think of the GI Bill, expanding the idea of national service. You know, many of us served in the military, and we were the beneficiaries of the GI Bill. But we need to expand what we think of as service. If you want to be a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, Uncle Sam ought to be able to pay your way, and in exchange, you pay it back in service in Breckinridge County, or in Harlan, or in Louisville. We can do this, and we can rebuild our country at the same time. These are some of the things. They're practical, they make sense, and they would invest in us. And of course, we need to tackle the massive racial injustice, and that means we need to have things like criminal justice reform, real reforms. You know, I'm talking about making sure that police officers, that there's a national database, for example, for police officers. Why is that so important? Well, because if you're dismissed from one police force, you shouldn't be able to roll into the next one. It's basic stuff. It's like you don't get kicked out of the Army and then get to roll into the Navy. It's just basic stuff, all right? We got to go forward with some of this. The last thing is so important, and it's Pillar 5. And if we don't do this piece, we won't get anything done. And that's tackle corruption in Washington.
Yeah.
It's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse, exponentially worse. This is literally the system that Mitch McConnell built. He built it for himself. He's gotten richer and richer and richer and richer. And how you doing? Okay? How do you tackle it? First thing I want to do is term limits.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is not a red or a blue issue. I can partner with the most conservative people on the far right, and because people are for this. It is the right thing to do. Nobody should be in Congress 42 years. Nobody. We got to do that. We got to get the absolute crazy money out of politics. It is insane. Because it's taking from us. The vast majority of commercials you see for Mitch right now, guess what? They're super PACs. They're dark money. And the problem with that is we don't even know, when it comes to dark money, we don't even know who's paying for this stuff. There's no transparency in it. By law, there's no transparency in it. I think that's wrong. I think you ought to know who's paying millions of dollars to Mitch McConnell. I think you ought to know what corporation or entity or person or where that person, what kind of country that person's from. Right now, we don't know. And that's the problem. It's a problem with our democracy, and our democracy will absolutely corrode from within if we don't take care of it. We need to do things like expand voting rights. Voting is a right, not a privilege. It's a right. It's a right that I defended when I wore the uniform. And you could say, well, don't people have those rights anymore? You know, in Kentucky, when we have this 12-hour window to vote, you have to think about the person who has to commute an hour to work. It's about an hour from here to Louisville, more or less, hour and a half. Think about the person that lives here and has to commute, has to drop her kid off at daycare, single mom maybe. Commutes, goes to work all day, comes home, has to pick her kid up. She's got a 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. window. I'm a mother of 3 small kids. That's not easy, even with 2 parents. We got to do better. It's 2020. I voted by mail my entire career in the military. It works just fine. Yeah. Works just fine. We should be doing these things. We should be passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Come on, this is a no-brainer. It's sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk, along with acts on prescription medication, along with 60 bills that would help veterans, sitting on his desk. You know, this is crazy. So these are all the things we do, but we can't do them unless we get rid of the corruption in Washington. And that starts with getting rid of Mitch McConnell, okay? It really does. And so I'm just going to wrap it up with two last things. One, I want to tell you what kind of senator, very briefly, I will be, what you can expect from me. And 2, I'm going to tell you how you can help. I'm somebody who's just an American. I'm just like you. I'm not a millionaire. I serve my country. My husband is a Navy guy. He served 20 years. We have 3 small children that we're trying to raise. We're able to do this because both of us have a modest pension from Uncle Sam from serving 20 years. We love our country. We love Kentucky. We know we can do better. That's why we're doing this thing. What you will expect from me is you'll expect somebody that will always listen. I do not want to go to Washington and just sit there. I do not want to go to Washington and listen to anyone else but Kentuckians. Come back, be here, listen to you, and try to work for what Kentucky needs. That's what you can count on with me. The second thing is every piece of legislation that I look at is I'm gonna look at it and say, how's it gonna affect families? Because I'll tell you, I've got these 3 kids, and I've been a mom for 8 years. And when people say to me, oh, well, what's harder, being a fighter pilot or running against Mitch McConnell? I said, dude, I'm a mom of 3 kids. That's way harder. And so we have to have more people that understand that in Congress and looking at legislation and making sure how does it affect families. That's number 2. And the third thing, which is also really important that you ought to know about me, is I'm a proud Democrat. My husband's a lifelong Republican. Guess what? For both Eric and I, we're Americans first. Always. And that means that I am always going to look at everything that goes up is how is it going to affect Kentucky? How is it going to affect our country? Partisanship, we got to get rid of it. All right? We've got to get back to the basics, or we will lose our democracy. That's what I'm all about. Now, how can you help? I can't do this alone. The only way we're going to defeat Mitch McConnell is if everybody who is here and everybody that you know that loves this country, that loves Kentucky, that knows we need change, is involved in this campaign. I would ask you today, take out your phones, go through every contact on your iPhone that lives here in Kentucky and send them a text. They'll probably love to hear from you because it's coronavirus and we haven't been getting out that much. And send them a text. And it's a nonpartisan text. It's just simply, hey, did you know that you could go online right now and get your ballot right now, today? Kentucky has never made it easier to vote than 2020. Today, tonight, what time is it? 12:56. You could do this in an hour. Go vote KY. Oh gosh, it's talking to me now. Go vote KY.com. And you send that to your contacts. Tell them they can get their ballot. They can get it by mail. You can vote without putting your life at risk. You can vote early. This mail-in voting goes until mid-October, about October 9th or 10th. And then you're going to have 3 weeks of early voting. So people can walk in. Every single county is going to have one polling location. And you can vote early. And that's so important. Get everybody you know to vote, to make their voice heard. That's something you can do. The other thing you can do is every day, we got 62 days, every single day you can do something to help this effort. You can make phone calls. You can sign up on my website at amymcgrath.com, volunteer to make phone calls, make text banking. You can get on social media. You can have conversations with your in-laws before Thanksgiving about politics. I've done it. You can do it. Do it. Do whatever you can. Do it for your country right now. Do it for Kentucky. Every single day, find something to do to help this effort. That is how we win. This race is very tight. Mitch McConnell's got a ton of money. But you know what? We're going to have the resources to go against him in a way he's never seen. Because there's a lot of Americans that know how bad he is for the country. Our job is to make sure that all these Kentuckians that we know how bad he is for Kentucky. And that we can do so much better. I thank you for your support. I thank you for your patriotism, for your love of Kentucky, for your activism, because there has never been a more important race than this one. We can change the trajectory of our country if we can get rid of Mitch McConnell. I ask you all to be involved in this. I'm going to do my part just as an American. I ask you to do yours. Thanks for coming out, and I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
And thank you, Amy, for taking the time to come here and talk to us. It really means a lot.
Good.
This is kind of the forgotten part of Kentucky.
I don't want to forget any part of Kentucky. Trust me. And you know, there's no county that isn't important. Agriculture, I know, is super important for this county.
It is.
If you want to talk about Mitch McConnell's record on that, I would love to talk about that because
I'm sure
it's
they might want to.
terrible.
Right now.
We've lost 10,000 family farms in Kentucky all in the last 20 years. And it's because of his constant catering to big ag, to big business. The farm bill that was passed, there's one major piece of legislation that's passed for farming at the federal level every couple years. And this bill was written, this latest one was written by Mitch McConnell. And it was so bad for everyday farmers that the one man who's a farmer in the Senate, Senator Chuck Grassley, who's not exactly a left-leaning guy, okay, he's a pretty hardcore conservative, he voted down on that bill. And when asked why, he said, because it's terrible. It's terrible for the family farm. That's what you get with Mitch McConnell. And even in agriculture, he's not for you. He's for big money. We've lost 10,000 family farms in Kentucky. What has he done with the hemp industry?
Killing it.
Killing it.
Killing it.
Because he didn't want to do the regulations that was needed to make that work. And who's left out in the cold? The farmers, who are now bankrupt because of it. That's Mitch McConnell. He cares about politics. He doesn't care about doing things right. He doesn't care about doing the right thing for people, even if it's hard. He cares about scoring a point. I'm tired of it. Enough is enough. Sorry, I get angry. People tell me you gotta stop being angry.
Being angry at the normal.
All right, we gotta wrap up. All right, do you guys have questions? And you do, sir.
How do you feel about the electoral college? Would you be an advocate for doing away with that?
Well, I'll tell you what. Right now, I'm focused on Kentucky,
I understand.
but I would say this. I think we ought to focused on Kentucky, and I would say that we should debate this. Just like all of these other issues that we bring up, we should allow debate on all these things on the floor. But I'll tell you what, I'm somebody that believes that if you vote in this country, you should be represented. So I will say that. Everybody should be represented. Okay? All right. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of a basic democratic principle. And the structure of that we should all debate. But right now, Mitch McConnell doesn't stifles debate. Think about minimum wage. I mean, you may think the minimum wage should stay at $7.25.
No.
And maybe, well, I'm just. All right, and maybe you think it should be 10, and maybe you think it should be 15, but guess what? It doesn't matter, because Mitch McConnell doesn't allow debate on these things. I think it should be 15. I think it should be gradually increased, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't allow debate. My feeling is, and what you ought to know about me is, I just want our democracy back. If the American public doesn't want that $15 minimum wage, all right, well, let's negotiate and debate what we do want. That's what I want to get back. If the American public doesn't want to change, the Electoral College or anything, okay, but let's debate it. Let's get our democracy back again. That's what I'm all about.